more than 3 decades, there has been one scenario that American military planners consistently treated with extreme caution. A direct war with Iran, behind closed doors in Washington, across multiple administrations and political parties. The message from military leadership remained strikingly consistent. Whether the briefing was delivered to Republican or Democratic presidents, the conclusion rarely changed. A war with Iran would not look like Iraq. It would not resemble Afghanistan, and it would almost certainly not unfold the way policymakers hoped. Senior defense officials repeatedly warned that such a conflict could spiral far beyond anyone's ability to control it. Yet today, the question many analysts are asking is no longer theoretical. It is very real. What happens when the political pressure to confront Iran finally overrides decades of military caution? And perhaps more importantly, what happens if the assumptions about how that war would unfold turn out to be wrong? Because according to many strategists, that possibility is exactly what makes the current situation so dangerous. For years, U.S. military planners ran simulations at exploring what a large-scale conflict with Iran might look like. These were not casual exercises. They involved extensive modeling, intelligence assessments, logistical planning, and wargaming scenarios that attempted to predict how both sides might respond. Again and again, those simulations pointed to the same uncomfortable conclusion. Yes, the United States possessed overwhelming military power. But overwhelming power does not always translate into easy victories. Iran presented a completely different type of strategic challenge. Unlike many countries the U.S. had fought in recent decades, Iran was not small, isolated, or militarily fragile. It was large, very large. Iran is nearly 4 times the size of Iraq. Its population approaches 90 million people. Its military structure is deeply embedded within its society and geography. And its terrain alone presents enormous challenges for any invading force. Mountain ranges stretch across large portions of the country. Harsh deserts cover others. Dense urban areas house millions of civilians. For military planners, that combination created an extremely difficult battlefield environment. One senior analyst once described the problem bluntly. If Afghanistan was difficult terrain, Iran would be exponentially harder. Geography. The silent weapon, geography rarely makes headlines in modern warfare discussions. But for strategists, it often determines everything. Iran's landscape is naturally defensive. Mountain ranges like the Zagros and Alborz create natural barriers that slow invading armies and complicate aerial operations. Narrow valleys, winding roads, and rugged terrain make large-scale mechanized offensives incredibly difficult. Even advanced military forces struggle when terrain limits mobility. History has shown this repeatedly. The Soviet Union discovered it in Afghanistan. The United States experienced it in both Afghanistan and Iraq. And military planners feared that Iran could amplify those difficulties dramatically, because Iran has spent decades preparing for exactly that kind of conflict. The asymmetric strategy. Iran never attempted to match the United States weapon for weapon. Instead, it developed what military strategists call asymmetric warfare capabilities. In simple terms, asymmetric warfare means fighting in ways that neutralize your opponent's advantages. Rather than competing directly with America's advanced air power or massive naval fleets, Iran invested heavily in tools designed to disrupt them. These include large missile inventories, fast attack naval craft, naval mines, drones, underground military infrastructure, and distributed command networks. The goal was not necessarily to defeat the United States in a traditional battlefield sense. The goal was to make any war extremely costly. Costly in money, costly in time, costly in political stability. Because modern wars are rarely decided by battlefield outcomes alone, they are often decided by whether the societies fighting them can tolerate the consequences long enough to continue. The strait that controls the world's oil. Perhaps the most important factor in the entire strategic equation is geography again, specifically a narrow waterway known as the Strait of Hormuz. This small stretch of water sits between Iran and the Arabian Peninsula. At its narrowest point, it is only about 21 miles wide. Yet despite its size, it carries enormous global importance. Roughly 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes through this single maritime corridor every day. Tankers loaded with crude oil from countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, and the United Arab Emirates travel through this passage before heading toward Europe, Asia, and beyond. For decades, this choke point has been considered one of the most strategically sensitive locations on Earth, and Iran sits directly along its northern coastline. Military planners have long warned that in the event of war, Iran could attempt to disrupt or threaten traffic through this corridor, not necessarily by closing it entirely. That would be extremely difficult, but by making passage dangerous enough that shipping companies, insurers, and energy markets begin to panic. Even small disruptions could trigger massive economic consequences because global energy markets react quickly to perceived risks. Prices can spike within hours. The economic domino effect oil is often discussed in terms of transportation. Gasoline for cars, jet fuel for airplanes, diesel for trucks, but oil's importance runs far deeper than that. Modern industrial society is built around petroleum in ways that most people rarely notice. Oil fuels heavy machinery used in construction and agriculture. It powers shipping fleets that move goods across oceans. It is used to manufacture plastics, chemicals, fertilizers, and countless industrial products. Even many modern pharmaceuticals rely on petroleum-based components. Because of this, disruptions in oil supply can ripple through entire economies. Factories slow down, shipping costs rise, food production becomes more expensive, inflation spreads across multiple sectors. The last time the world experienced a severe oil disruption was during the 1973 oil crisis, when an embargo by several oil-producing nations sent global prices soaring. The resulting shock triggered recessions in multiple countries and forced governments to rethink their entire energy strategies. But the scale of energy that now passes through the Persian Gulf is far greater than it was in the 1970s, which means the potential consequences today could be even more dramatic. Why military leaders were skeptical when military planners studied all these factors together, a pattern emerged. A war with Iran would likely begin with airstrikes. The United States has historically relied on air power to gain early dominance in conflicts. Advanced aircraft, precision-guided munitions, and long-range cruise missiles could target military facilities, command centers, and infrastructure. But analysts repeatedly warned that bombing alone rarely achieves political objectives. History offers many examples. During World War II, massive bombing campaigns were conducted against major cities. In Japan, entire urban areas were devastated. Yet even those catastrophic attacks did not immediately force surrender. Similarly, in the Korean War, North Korea endured extensive aerial bombardment. The regime survived. In the Vietnam War, the United States dropped more bombs than were used during the entire Second World War. The North Vietnamese government remained intact. Military historians have studied these cases extensively. One pattern appears repeatedly. Air power can destroy infrastructure. It can weaken military capability. but it rarely causes populations to overthrow their own governments during wartime. In many cases, the opposite occurs. External attacks often strengthen national unity. The risk of escalation. Another major concern raised by analysts involves something known as escalation dynamics. Wars rarely remain confined to the initial actions that begin them. Each step taken by one side tends to provoke a response from the other. If one side targets military bases, the other may respond with strikes on similar facilities. If energy infrastructure is attacked, retaliatory strikes may target economic assets in return. Each stage of escalation increases the stakes, and with each escalation, the risk of unintended consequences grows. This is particularly dangerous in regions where critical infrastructure is concentrated. The Persian Gulf contains some of the most important oil and gas facilities in the world. Many of them are large, exposed, and difficult to fully defend. Even small attacks could cause major disruptions. The Gulf states' dilemma. For decades, several Gulf countries relied heavily on American military protection. Large American bases were built throughout the region. Naval fleets patrolled nearby waters. Missile defense systems were deployed to counter potential threats. This arrangement formed the foundation of regional security. But in a large-scale conflict involving Iran, those same bases could become targets. And that possibility creates a difficult strategic dilemma. Military installations designed to provide security may also attract attacks, which means host nations could find themselves caught in the middle of a conflict they did not initiate. Some regional governments have quietly begun reconsidering how much risk they are willing to accept. A conflict with global consequences. What makes the current situation particularly serious is how quickly its consequences could spread beyond the Middle East. Energy markets are deeply interconnected. A disruption in one region can trigger price increases across the entire world. Countries that depend heavily on imported oil could experience immediate economic stress. Industries may face higher production costs. Consumers could see rising fuel and food prices. Financial markets tend to react strongly to geopolitical uncertainty, especially when critical supply chains are involved. For this reason, many economists believe a prolonged disruption in Gulf energy flows could trigger global economic instability, not necessarily overnight, but gradually, as rising costs ripple through international trade and production systems. The question no one can answer. Yet all of these factors lead to one unavoidable question. If a war with Iran begins, how does it end? Military victories do not always translate into political solutions. Air campaigns may damage infrastructure. Naval operations may secure shipping routes temporarily. But ultimately, wars end through negotiations, settlements, or exhaustion. And in the case of Iran, analysts warn that reaching any kind of diplomatic resolution could be extraordinarily complicated, because both sides would face domestic political pressures that make compromise difficult. In Washington, political leaders would be reluctant to appear weak. In Tehran, leaders would face their own pressures not to concede under foreign attack, which creates the possibility of a prolonged confrontation where neither side wants to back down. A turning point in global strategy. For decades, the international system operated under a relatively stable security structure. The United States served as the dominant military power across multiple regions. Allies relied on its protection. Adversaries generally avoided direct confrontation. But conflicts like this test those assumptions. They reveal the limits of power, they expose vulnerabilities, and they reshape how other nations calculate their own security strategies. Some analysts believe the current crisis could represent a turning point in the global balance of power, not because one battle decides everything, but because prolonged conflicts often accelerate shifts that were already underway. The situation is still evolving. At this stage, the full outcome of the crisis remains uncertain. Diplomatic channels may still produce solutions. Regional actors may attempt to de-escalate tensions. Economic pressures could push governments toward negotiations. But there are also scenarios in which escalation continues, each strike prompting another, each retaliation expanding the scope of the conflict. And if that happens, the consequences may extend far beyond the battlefield. Because wars involving major energy corridors do not remain regional for long, they quickly become global.